Hello and welcome to the Lost in Possession podcast. The Champions League is almost upon us. That's right, it's Christmas Eve for many of us as the draw takes place tomorrow. The final qualifying rounds are taking place as we speak. So you know what that means. Start that intro.
Here we go.
Hello and happy Wednesday to all of you. I am Reese and I am from the Lost in Possession podcast, and I am joined as usual by Jordan and Jamie. So, as you know, the Champions League draw is with us tomorrow, meaning that return of European football is almost here. As you can tell, I'm clearly excited. Jordan, you look thrilled. Jamie, you look absolutely buzzing. You two should be. Your teams are in it. Mine isn't. So, the draw is upon us, and it looks like it's going to be some very mouth-watering fixtures there in the group stages already. Very, very excitable times. And we're going to dig right into it. Jordan, Jamie, how are you feeling about the build-up? Are you confident about who you're going to get in your groups? You know, why don't we tell the viewers what the possibilities could be?
So let's get the pots up on the screen to start things off. From my side, Chelsea are in pot 2. I remember the good old days, but when we were in pot 1, not worried about groups of death and all the rest of it. But yeah, we're in pot 2, so I'm definitely looking to the left of the screen on pot 1. There's some very tasty potential draws in that. I mean, in terms of who I've got my eye on, obviously they're at the top of the list, as you can see. Real Madrid, the holders. For me, obviously knowing that we can't draw an English team, for me, they're the ones I'm probably least, I want least. Although I kind of want a measure of revenge almost for obviously what happened last year, the way we got knocked out. We gave them 2 pretty good matches. I think they're the obvious team that you'd want to avoid, ideally in the group stages. Probably the other ones for me in pot 1, I'd say are Bayern Munich. Obvious reasons. We talk about there being a farmers league for those guys, but 7-0 they won at the weekend away. Yes, they're not necessarily match ready because of the league at times, but ultimately they've got the pedigree, they've got the experience. PSG, the ones I'm kind of looking at pot 1. Obviously, you kind of want to avoid them for the obvious reasons, but I would love to see us play against PSG. I think it's quite a contrast in styles, and I think that'd be a really good game. And obviously, I'd love to go to the bridge and watch us play PSG. But yeah, other than that, wanting to avoid a group of death, I'd probably want Frankfurt in pot 1, if I'm being honest. 8th place in the German league last year. I'd fancy us to definitely beat them as our tough first draw. But yeah, I'll let you boys digest. Jamie, what's your thoughts? You're in pot 1, so you're maybe a little bit more chilled.
Well, you say that, but looking at the pots, I don't think pot 1's that stacked, especially when you look at the sort of English clubs. They can't play City, so really you are avoiding as your sort of the main 2, as you mentioned, is Madrid and Munich. But AC Milan have sort of, now improving on year, but I wouldn't say you fear them really. And I think it's because the English clubs are very strong at the moment. So you don't really fear many teams. So PSG, yes, they've got that incredible front 3, but they always seem to lack something. I know I can't say much. We're being a City fan, we're
pot calling the kettle black.
We're lacking as well. But we sort of, when we play and we do beat them, so they lack something else and we do as well. But no, I think if you're looking at pot 1, it's not as sort of threatening as it probably usually is. I think with Frankfurt winning Europa stops that being that sort of, I don't know, another team that sort of just seems a bit stronger. I don't think Frankfurt are going to be the ones that everyone's in pot 2, 3 and 4 are going to be like, we want them, we fancy our chances. But if I'm looking at pot 2, I'm probably going to be playing, a Spanish side, looking at 3 out of the 5 you can get. But to be honest, Barcelona obviously in spending incredible amounts with don't know what money, and we're playing them tonight in a random friendly. I haven't seen the lineups, but I really hope it's none of our actual players and they're all academy.
Why are you playing them in a friendly?
It's a charity game. I don't know the exact reasons. It's a charity game, and with obviously Pep and sort of a few people on the board are sort of connected with Barca. I think they're happy to do it because it helps sort of people they're friends with. But to be fair, I did notice that the League Cup was going on. So we're not the only team playing midweek this week. There are teams that actually have actual competitive games, but I still would have preferred not to have the injury risk that these games can bring. But it's a bit of an odd one, that. But speaking of sort of teams that, might cause injuries after our game with them last year, is Atletico. I don't want to play Atletico for that reason. They will kick us to bits again and we'll get fined for it. And Atletico Madrid won't get fined for it because, assault is allowed on a football pitch. Look at Spurs. They can pull hair of Chelsea players. We can get kicked 2 lumps out of and we get fined for it. It's another reason, we hate UEFA, but it continues. But Reese, who's your sort of, you're looking at pot 1 and 2, who would you want to see as sort of a neutral in them top 2 pots?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, what shocks me is the whole point of this competition is do you want to play the best teams in the world, and both of you want the easiest groups possible. You want to be bringing, the PSGs down. You want to be going up against the Barcelonas. That's the whole point of this competition.
It's not as if you knock them out in the group stage. The group stage knocks them out. They go into
I know.
They're not knocked out.
It's still that rare chance.
If it was winner takes all, I get your point more.
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone wants an easy group. Let's be honest.
I think what's interesting about this year actually is this is a unique Champions League because obviously we've got the World Cup in November. So the group stages are going to be very thick and fast, both Champions League, Europa League, Conference League. So there's going to be a lot that clubs are going to have to deal with. Looking at this, Manchester City have to be the favourites, and potentially PSG could be a close second. I mean, ideally, the romantic inside of me would love to see, Manchester City and Barcelona in the same group, Chelsea, Real Madrid in the same group. Things like that really, really do get sort of your mouth watering. But I think best case scenario for City if they are to get Seville, Shakhtar Donetsk, and Victoria Plaza. I think that's their dream group.
We do love a Shakhtar Donetsk, don't we?
Yes, that is quite.
We didn't get him last year, and we didn't know what was going on.
It's like Arsenal when they used to get Olympiacos every year for some reason. I think your worst case scenario is definitely Barcelona, Borussia Dortmund, and Celtic in terms of how, what your potential ones could be there. I think Celtic away is always going to be a tough one.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think Borussia Dortmund, that they are what they are, but again, playing them away is never ideal.
See, I'd slightly disagree with that. I would put Inter Milan as the ones I'd least like to play in that.
Maybe.
But who did you say, Reece? Sorry, instead of
Dortmund.
Milan.
Dortmund. I think Dortmund is your worst case scenario there.
I'd disagree. I'm with you, Jamie, on that. I'd happily take Dortmund because if you're 2-0 up, if you're 2-0 down in the 90th minute, you can still win the game. So I'm certainly not worried about Dortmund. For me, give us Inter Milan. Let us put Romelu Lukaku out of the competition. Let's have it.
There you go.
Yeah, I'd love to draw
that's going against what you said, Reece.
I would say that's Chelsea's worst case scenario, getting Inter Milan in the group.
Nah,
I think it's better equipped to take on Inter Milan than what Chelsea would be.
If UEFA is somehow fixed, we're getting drawn against Inter Milan. The reception to Lukaku, just imagine it would be top tier TV. So secretly on paper I shouldn't, but I think a lot of Chelsea fans want to see that happen 100%. For me, I disagree with you said Pilsen. I think Maccabi Haifa. I mean, I'm not. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember them ever being in the competition. And I mean, when I say scrape through, they got a 91st minute own goal last night to get through. Like, literally, they have scraped through. This will be a huge opportunity for them, but they will be way out their depth. So I think in an ideal world, you'd probably want them in pot 4. I
think you'd be happy with either, let's be honest.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot
one of them two. I don't think there's much in it. You're expected to win 3-4-0.
Yeah.
Home and away, 6 points, just avoid injuries. I think that's kind of as it gets, really, with them. But in pot 4, I think there's some interesting teams there, though. Obviously, a few yet to be confirmed because they're playing. But I'm quite liking the sort of Marseille and Celtic. They could be like very difficult games for a pot 4 team. And then even PSV and Rangers, both of them can show up on their day.
Yeah.
Like Rangers, obviously, last year get into the final, and funnily enough, in the bottom pot, and they could have been in the top pot. Like it's fine margins on that. But
I think Bodo Glint, if they get through, when I say they're going to cause a few shocks, but they're not going to be there to make up the numbers. And I don't think many teams will want to go up to the right top of the Norway around October time, in the freezing cold. I think they could pose some issues for some of the teams, especially the teams that come from, the more sunny areas like Porto and Seville. I don't think teams will like going there. PSV Rangers is a strange one.
To be fair, we've got the Nordic meat shield, so I think we'd be fine if we had to go up to the top of Norway with him.
Yeah, I mean, being from Manchester, I suppose you can go in shorts, couldn't you? Shorts, flip flops.
They did beat Roma. Don't forget. I think that was a 6-1 mauling. We can't forget that. They are a goal up as well on aggregate. So
not Celtic out as well.
Yeah, a draw tonight gets them through. So maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Trasm. I think as well. There's the quality of the team, but I think the psychological aspect of these games as well come on like no other. Going away to Trabzonspor, they're going to make it intimidating. Marseille, they're going to make it intimidating. I think Celtic perhaps getting Chelsea in a group might be an interesting one because obviously there's a link between Chelsea and Rangers. So Celtic are certainly going to have something to something to say there. Club Brugge, were in it last year. They could probably be a better opposition again this year. Just out of curiosity, who do you think faces the biggest potential challenge? We haven't touched upon Spurs and Liverpool yet, but both of them being in pot 2, they could get some real tough groups. What are you thinking there?
Well, Liverpool have started poorly in the league. However, I do think it is different for Liverpool when they play Champions League. Even when they weren't doing as well as they sort of have been in previous years, they still did well in this competition. I think Liverpool will be happy to face anyone. They'll want a bit of revenge for Real Madrid again. Bayern Munich, you've also got the Mane link there. I still think Liverpool fancy themselves against anyone in pot 1. Spurs, they're obviously meant to be sort of on the up. I think they'd want to avoid Bayern. They do not want another sort of... When Bayern turn up to London, they normally get a hatful. So I think they'd want to avoid them. I think Spurs fans would love to go and play Real Madrid, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I think anyone in that group, I think they'd want to avoid Bayern the most, and I think they'd enjoy playing everyone else.
I think in pot 3, they'd want to avoid Inter Milan, personally. Not only Conte's return, but I think that could be a nightmare group if they managed to get, say, Bayern Munich and Inter Milan in the same group.
Oh yeah, if you get Bayern Inter, you're not in a nice group there. So I sort of went with the worst sort of group would be sort of a Real Madrid Inter Celtic is kind of what I'd see being the worst for all the pot 2 teams. Well, for Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs. And then for City, I think Barca would be the worst, then Inter and Celtic again. But in terms of sort of a favourable draw, I think all the pot 2 teams have just got to be looking at Frankfurt thinking, yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like you have to be, and then it's more like Bayer
I think
Leverkusen.
Ajax as well, just to jump in on that. I think
Or-
Ajax as well, without Ten Hag, they're already looking a little bit fragile in their league. And I think that could probably be another
But I
easy-ish
think they're
tie.
another one of the teams that just turn up in the Champions League. Like
Yeah.
they're not challenging to win it, I don't think, but they're coming quarterfinalists. And then in their games in the quarterfinals, it's always a competition. It's not like they don't get walked over by 5-0 sort of both games. I think with the pot three, if you're looking at it, obviously if you get Frankfurt, you can't get Bayer Leverkusen. So you'd be looking more at Sporting, Benfica, sort of one of them two teams. A nice trip to Portugal. It's a nice away day, so big teams looking towards that.
I think speaking of Portugal, what do you think of Porto? They're in pot one. They've made a good. They seem to have revitalised themselves under their coach, and they won the league last year. Do you think they could be? And they do tend to do quite well in the competition. Last winning it in 2004. Do you think they've got a chance of even? Do you think they could be handed a nice group? Would you fancy playing them, George, as Chelsea fans?
Yeah. Again, similar to Ajax. I still think Frankfurt, as we've said, as Jamie said, that's the kind of dream pot one draw. But Porto, for me, they're a threat. Obviously we had them in the knockouts on our route to winning it, and they were better than I expected. However, being honest, I'd back us every day of the week to beat them on both legs, and I do see them as maybe a round of 16 team. Quarterfinals would be a bit of a push, so I'm not particularly worried. That being said, it because of that, they're not on the levels of City, Bayern, PSG, etc. So a team like that could end up with actually a very, very tough draw. If let's say a team like Porto were to get, maybe Barcelona, or let's say one of the English teams, a Dortmund or an Inter, and then a Marseille, you wouldn't say Porto are massive favourites against Marseille. So I think for them, they could end up with a sort of group of death for them almost. So I think a few of those teams will be a little bit concerned at how some of the draws could play out. Just to touch on your points around Spurs, I feel a little bit similar with Spurs. Obviously, they've not been in the Champions League for a while now. Obviously, last time they were in it, they did fairly well. But we've got to remember that last season under Conte, they didn't get out of the group stage of the Europa Conference League. We have to bear that in mind. I know they've made signings. So I do see a scenario where Spurs, their kind of dream return to the Champions League, apart from a nice couple of holidays, could actually end in disaster. I do think, again, an Inter Milan, a Napoli, even a Sporting could upset them, really could upset them. And similarly, a Marseille, Celtic, I do see a bit of fragility there for Spurs, depending on the draw. So I think it'll be very interesting to see who they end up with.
I do think you have to think of Nuno was in charge of a lot of the games in the conference before he got sacked. They couldn't play their last game. I know it. To be honest, in the conference, they should have just sort of blitzed their group.
Yeah, you shouldn't be sweating.
They shouldn't be sweating. No, I agree with that, but they didn't take it properly seriously, which I have no idea why. Because go and win a trophy. You've not done one for years. Go and win a trophy. But I don't know. I think Spurs would be fancying themselves against any pot 3 and pot 4 teams, certain. And then there's only sort of a few, like Madrid, Bayern Munich, PSG. The rest of them, I'd actually put them as favourites.
Yeah, I think Spurs would fancy themselves a lot of these teams. Spurs on their day could, beat majority of these teams on their day. Obviously, Conte's never won the Champions League before, and I think the last time he was in it with Inter, they didn't even get out of the group. I think Mönchengladbach took their place, if I'm not mistaken. So
this is it. Whether he's going to take it seriously, isn't it? Well, it's not seriously. It's whether he's just doesn't do well in the Champions League.
Yeah, and I think he'll be hoping for a favourable draw because when he was at Inter Milan, he had pretty nasty draw, really. Real Madrid in it. I think they could go far. I think even if they got PSG in their group, I think they'd fancy themselves, like Jamie said, against the other two teams. So they'd probably just go, you know what, let's keep second. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. But
so on that, sorry, I was going to say just quickly, Reece, on that note. So I guess we'll pick. It'll be helpful if we pick one top team we think might struggle, and then one maybe bad team who we think could be a dark horse. So yeah. I'll for my top team, I'll go Spurs. Who would you guys say maybe out of the pot 1 and 2 teams? Who do you think could actually really struggle and maybe get eliminated out of the group stage potentially?
I'm looking at the 2 Italian teams, to be honest. AC and Juve. I'm looking at them, I'm thinking, I know AC have obviously a very rich history in the Champions League, but I feel like they might be lacking something. And I just think one of the two, I'm gonna say Juve get knocked out probably in the group stage. I don't know who they're going to get unless they do get the Frankfurt pot. I see them struggling because they're not going to like playing the Dortmunds. Really, I don't think if they get one of them, they probably won't like playing the Portuguese teams either. But I feel like, I'm going to go Juve.
I think Atletico Madrid could struggle, you know. I mean, I think Seville are a team that might be hit and miss. I think Leipzig are a team that have got better, and I think they can score goals against anybody. And at home themselves, they could rely on their home games. Juventus, I see what you mean by that. Barcelona, I think they'll be okay. PSG, etc., will be okay. But I think Atletico Madrid could be in a bit of danger, actually. You know, they lost to Villarreal at the weekend. They seem to lose silly games or they draw silly games. I think this could hit them quite hard, and they might go to the Europa League, which I don't think is the end of the world for them. But I think just looking at where they are at the moment in terms of a club, I don't see much progression from them.
Okay, I think Sevilla is quite an interesting one because, as we know, they are the kings of the Europa League. So maybe there's a bit of maybe they secretly want to slide into third and become favourites for Europa. And all right, so to flip that on its head, who do you guys think could be dark horses? Maybe a pot 3, maybe a pot 4 team if you're feeling confident. That could maybe upset the odds, maybe get to the knockout stages and who knows where else.
I think obviously, I think if we talk about pot 1, for example, PSG, obviously they're not a dark horse, but the way they've restructured their club now probably puts them in good stead to go really far. But looking at the lower ones there, I think again, like I would say Leipzig could be up there. I think it'd be interesting to see what Salzburg do. Shakhtar Donetsk, if you're bearing in mind their current situation, will they rely on a lot of momentum to get them there? You know, with the whole of Ukraine behind them, probably. I think Shakhtar Donetsk might do quite well.
That's quite an interesting one, to be fair. I'm only looking at Dortmund and thinking they're the ones who probably could get out of their group. I think Inter obviously do have a good chance as well, but I didn't want to be too obvious going there, the toughest team, and get out. But I think a lot of these teams will struggle just how good I think pot 2 is. And then pot 1, I think, I probably can only think of Inter Milan, to be perfectly honest. I think Lukaku's home. He's going to go and score a load of goals and rub it in Tuchel's face, even if he doesn't get Chelsea in the group.
All right, you boys are playing safe. I'm going to go a bit more risky and say Marseille in pot 4. Draw dependent. I think there is a scenario where they get a favourable draw where the teams in pot 1 and 2 are kind of on their level. And I'd argue maybe a couple of the teams on pot 3, they'd think they're probably about the same as, maybe better. So I reckon Marseille, if they get a slightly favourable draw, could actually make it out the group as underdogs and get through to the knockout stages.
You are aware that Marseille's boss was booed on his first game before he'd even kicked the ball. So for me, that's why I didn't pick Marseille. They're a good squad. They've got a good side, some talented players, but I don't know. They're a funny team.
Controversy
I
can.
don't think anyone's going to like going to them, but I just don't see them being a proper issue.
Well, yeah, to that point, if their owner's not even comfortable in the stadium, I mean, an away team's not going to feel particularly comfortable either, are they? So
yeah, they're not going to feel comfortable. But if you're not happy with your owners, it's because you're not doing very well.
Yeah.
Like that's sort of the reason for it. Obviously, you've got United protesting their owners for years, and I don't reckon they'd be doing it as much if they were winning stuff still.
Hey, go on.
But go on then. We'll go with who do you think's going to win it?
We'll start with you, Jamie, because there's no surprises with who you're going to pick.
Well, I was looking at pot 3, thinking, no, obviously I'm backing my own club. We're gonna do it.
Sixth time lucky, as they say.
We've got Haaland up front. He's going to be that missing piece for us, and we're going to go and win it. Yeah, I'm taking it.
Reese.
I mean, Man City are like the bookies' favourite, and I think they've got to be. I know I say it every year. This is their best time to win it, but come on.
I'm getting deja vu.
With the rest of these pots here, you know, even if they got Barcelona in their group and Inter Milan, you know, that knocks out potentially 2 teams already. They have to win it this year. If not, you know, you've got to be careful for PSG. You've got to be really careful.
I don't like that word of the have to win it. Because you've got to think.
You don't have to. It's not going to be detrimental to Pep.
One team wins it.
Every time.
And the best team doesn't always win it. Let's be honest.
Well, exactly.
But
we've had this debate, but yeah, come on. There's only so many billions you can spend and not win it. And there's only so many.
Don't put an S on that. Billions.
Billions. Billion and a bit. But no, look, you know, we've said it before. I think City have been, you know, bookies' favourites probably last 3-4 years. You've got Haaland now. Logic would dictate that City will and should. I do agree with Reece. Should win it. But the reason we love the Champions League is the unpredictability. It's a knockout stage at the end of the day. I'm not going to pick one. I'm going to pick 2, and I'll say why, because they're both in pot 2. I'm going to go against everyone, back in the usual suspects of PSG and City. I think, despite the controversy, despite everyone writing both these teams off early stages, you cannot rule out the European pedigree of Liverpool and of Chelsea. Don't rule them out. Yes, everyone's had a bad start, but they've got it. They've got the squads to do it. They've got the managers to do it, and they've got the history to do it. So keep an eye out on a few of those pot 2 teams. So
no, I think they're fair choices. Obviously, I think all the sort of English clubs are strong. So I do feel like they're in there. Obviously, I think we have to call out the current winners because they find a way of winning it.
Yeah.
Even when they need 2 goals in 3 minutes. I don't want to remind myself, but got to say it. They somehow get through. I
can't rule them out. Yeah.
And they had the hardest draw possible.
Even when they're not the best team, they still manage to find a way to win it. Like, I'll still stand by that. They weren't the best team, but they found the ways to win, and that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Agreed. Well, that wraps us up for this Champions League special edition. As always, let us know your thoughts on Instagram, on YouTube, in the comments. Spurs fans, was I a bit too harsh? Are you going to go out at the group stages? Or can you take on the big boys and compete again under Conte? Let us know your thoughts. But as always, like, comment and subscribe. You know the drill.